Peace. Greetings to you all. It's your brother Naheem, BKA Lord Abba, AKA Mr. Just the Facts. First and foremost, y'all already know, hit that like button, fam. Share the video out. We're talking politics. This is what the Be the Power channel is dedicated to. This is what the Be the Power moniker is centered on. It is centered on power. And in this country, politics is power. Your vote is actually worth something. Because if it wasn't, politicians wouldn't spend millions to billions of dollars every election cycle trying to buy your votes. So you make sure that you share this video out. Send it to someone. Let them know that there is a real political discussion happening on this YouTube channel called Be the Power. If this is your first time coming to our channel, hit the subscribe button. Hit that little subscribe button, and right next to it, there's a little bell icon. Hit the little bell icon, which will ensure that you are notified every time BTP drops our dynamic content. And if you would like to support tonight, we want to make sure all support is going to Gabriel Piemonte, who is running for the Aldermanic seat in the 5th Ward of Chicago. So you already know, family, we're going to get this thing started. Before we bring our guest on, however, let me do some housekeeping. Give a shout out to the fam. BTP Riri is on deck. What's good, sis? Vince Jefferson is plugged in. Sister Shanna, BTP, Sister Shanna is on deck. The Cali fam is in the building. Sister Shayna, the Atlanta Freedman is on deck. What's going on? Sister Cindy B was good. The OG Arthur Ward is in the building. Peace to the sacred family. Farouk Salam. Peace. Salam, brother. So without further ado, I want to bring my guest on, Gabe Piemonte. We're gonna talk, usually when Gabe is having these conversations, the questions are always bogged down to the same set of questions about reparations and what you're going to do for Black folks and yada, yada, yada. Today, I want to have a broader conversation because this man is also running an award that composes non-freedmen. So I want to know what his policies look like for that ward and how those policies can have an impact on surrounding wards. So without further ado, let's bring on our guest, Gabriel Piemonte. What's going on, man?
Naeem, how are you, sir? How are you?
I'm good.
Man, you laid a document on me this week. First of all, I really appreciated the space you did with news talk about just kind of laying out this whole Friedman definition thing, which is there's a lot of misunderstanding about that term and its significance. And you had done what you could in what the space allowed, and then shared some information with me that you had shared. I don't know if this would technically be an amicus brief. I'm not as well versed in this stuff as you are, but you wrote something for the Supreme Court. And once again, I had this experience. It reminded me of Atlanta, where it's like literally the room got brighter and my understanding got illuminated by it. It's powerful stuff. And I understand that people have opinions and strong opinions and they want to kind of duke it out and whatnot. But man, if people would be still and listen a little bit as you're explaining this, it makes so many things make so much sense. And why this isn't just a choice, like there are 7 or 8 different words and you can pick your favorite word and it's all the same. But in terms of policy and strategy, it's very powerful. Anyway, I just want to acknowledge you because I think you do a lot of these things not in secret. That's probably making it too dramatic, but without trying to get any attention for it. You're educating people all the time. And it was a lot. In fact, it inspired some aspects of, I did a press conference this morning, and the way I presented it was transformed by some of the things I read by you. So we'll get into that a little bit later.
Oh man, honors.
Respect.
It was too late for us to submit it as an amicus brief because the trial I don't want to give too much details out because I seen the comment you made, and I was about it wasn't, you ain't hear enough scholarship. And I don't know at what point you made the comment, because I know that in that space I decided that I was going to scale back a little bit in the beginning because I wanted to get more into the Q&A. And I think it's best. All right, we got Brother Marlon Watson joining in. I think it's best when there are questions coming and we can have answers to those questions.
Yes,
We can provide
yes,
proofs, et cetera, et cetera.
absolutely. Yep.
I seen
Yeah.
your comment. I was like, I'm gonna hit Gabe up. I'm gonna send him the document that we sent to the Supreme Court, and maybe that'll help with.
It helped tremendously. It helped tremendously.
Indeed.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion. There's
That's
always
right.
more to learn. And yeah, so
That's right. That's right.
it was a great moment.
That's right. Real quick, we got BTP Ali in the bill. He said, "Don't give out details. These monsters don't deserve nothing." Kambe, if you're a piece. Oh, that's Dante. What's going on, fam? Sister Antonia, what's good? Says the Boston Freedman is in the building. We got the Chicago Freedman King right now in the building. Marlon Watson, what's going on, bro?
Mr. Reparations, how you doing, sir?
That's right.
What's happening? Yeah, I literally just stepped in the house, man. So but yeah, we're here again, man, and we are eternally appreciative of you and DP, man. And the United Sons and Daughters of Freedmen. We want to make that a household name in Chicago.
Honest.
Yes, indeed.
Straight up. If we get Gabe in, we get y'all in. You know what I'm saying?
Rooting, man.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. You got Gabe?
No, I didn't mean to step on what you were saying. I was just going to say, of course, Marlon and I talk all the time about the education component of the Bureau, that there's elements such as the city-owned vacant parcels, which in the limited research we've done in them so far consistently were originally owned by freedmen, that we're going to give back. In the private, that will draw people, kind of material interest, of course, motivate people. Once they're in, education is key. And, I think we have a shared vision of that. We are in the midst of history. We are in the flowing river of history. We have scholars and intellectuals in the movement that are shaping our understanding, not just of reparations, but the whole world. And without question, Naheem, we were just saying this, Marlon, you're one of those leading intellectuals. And so as people come in, I can even imagine literally there's a widescreen television. You're sitting over here. We're going to get you in a minute. We're going to help you genealogy in a minute.
I got to bring the team with me, BTP. I wouldn't be here without my team. I wouldn't be here without the team. Shout out
every
to
time. Yes. Yes, BTP, no question about it. And it's, just having people, because, it's like we got to use the tools that are being used against us as people trying to create a just society. And so instead of the stupid commercials and the noise and the sports that's, always so violent, when you sit in a waiting room, it's always some, daytime talk show or something like that. Some beautiful education, just, playing BTP from YouTube to the widescreen in the Bureau, people getting educated whether they want to be or not. But I think there'll be a hunger for it. Once you start to learn, you want to know more.
That's a fact. That is a fact.
Yeah, this Freedmen Bureau thing, it could get real. It can get crazy. It can get real crazy. We're talking about a component of it for freedmen women, a component of it for freedmen men, where we can come and just the men and the boys are communicating with each other. We got our own club, and it could be incredible, man. So that, and that's one thing that's so exciting about this is we'll have everybody in their own lane. Like being a politician, I've thought about it, but I don't really think I want to do that. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I don't say no, but I go back and forth. But it's like, no, Gabe is excellent at that. Like talking to people in the public and persuasive. Dude's communication game is impeccable.
I'm not a Christian, but there's a story in the Bible about Moses and Aaron. And God is speaking to Moses, and he's telling him, you got to go to the people, you got to go to the people. And Moses is basically saying, like, I don't talk that good. He like, don't worry, I'm gonna put the words in Aaron's mouth. You just stand up in front of the people, and you know what I'm saying? And it's you could take it as literal, or you could take it as an allegory. And sometimes there are people like, I don't think I'm a good speaker at all. You know what I'm saying? That's just me. Some people think I am. I'm like, really? Well, thank you. That's a compliment, because I really don't. But I know I got to talk. But if I had the choice to let like one of the brothers speak before me, I usually would let them speak before me. So that's just what it is, and that is a sign of just how we are as humans, that social compact that we create with each other, and understanding our strengths and our weaknesses, and who can do what and where they can do that what at. So just we're going to keep moving this thing, and we're going to keep teaching, and we're going to make sure that we get this message out. So Brother Marlon, tonight I want to go in a different direction, because I know that we talk about the Freedmen's Bureau, we talk about reparations, we talk about the things that are tantamount to freedmen success, right? I want to get into some of the policy prescriptions that you all have drafted up for the Fifth Ward of Chicago. And I'm on the website, and I was looking at it earlier. And I wanted, because that was my thinking. I don't want to keep us just talk about that. Chicago is a metropolitan city. It has its quote unquote black areas, quote unquote white areas, Spanish. I've been to Chicago. I've been there, and I already know. I've been to, what was that, Little
Village?
I've been to a bunch of little whatever. It was one spot. It was nothing but Indians. One spot it was Puerto Ricans. One spot it was Mexicans. Then I kid y'all not, we are driving to we driving through the hood, because that's when I was in the Moorish movement, and I got the address to the temple, and I was with this Spanish guy named Antonio out there. And so we're driving to the MSTFA temple, and it's in the hood. And I kid you not, the deeper we get into the hood, it feels like this dark cloud engulfs the car. And I remember saying to myself, I have to do something about this. And one more story before we get into this. I'm on the going to the Greyhound bus. I had to get dropped off at the Burger King. I think it was either a Burger King or McDonald's across from the Greyhound, because there was no way to park over there or something like that. So I get dropped off, and I'm in the center divider in the street, and this old woman in one of those carts, them little drivey buggy, I don't know what they're called. And she rides up to me, and she does this. If you're familiar with the Moors, especially from Chicago, you basically know what this means. This just means peace and standing on 5 principles: love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, etc. She was like, "Are you a Mason?" I was like, "No, I'm not a Mason." And she was like, "Oh, okay." So when I start talking to her, and she said to me before she drove off in her little buggy, she said, "We need you out here, brother. We need brothers like you out here." Contrast that to a story, just a conversation I had today with an elderly woman in a supermarket, and she felt so secure with the fact that there are a group of us out here fighting for reparative justice and fighting for our people, and letting her know that things will change in the next 10 years. So, that's some of my Chicago story. Right. So I want to, on the website, you have local deliberative democracy. And it says, establish local development councils in parts of Hyde Park, South Shore, and Pockettown / Greater Grand Crossing in the ward. Extend 20th Ward community input process to part of Woodlawn and 5th Ward. Participatory budgeting to be implemented effective immediately. Establish a local election fund to provide funds for PACs, LCS, and ECPS candidates who agree to limit their spending to the grant provided. Now, the reason why I wanted to start with this first, because a lot of our people simply do not understand civics. I don't think most of American society understands civics, but there was a point where civics was a part of our education, and most people do not understand the functions or the functionality of how their local government work. So if you can, and I know these are 4 points, but if you could kind of sum up, each of those bullet points in your response and give a breakdown. So what do you mean by local deliberative democracy and how that plays out in the Fifth Ward of Chicago?
So I'm gonna get out the way and let Gabe do what he does best. I'm gonna back on that and let y'all
do it.
All right. Oh, and please, Marlon, when you are inclined, please do jump in, because your insights are such an important part of this, the platform, the work that we're doing. So, in some of this, I'm a spokesman, especially when we talk about all the work around reparations. It's not, I don't think any of those ideas are original. The way we're combining them might be a little unique in Chicago, but without Arthur, who I think I heard you say is in the house. So hello, Arthur, and Marlon, and some other really important freedmen in our process, Linda Jennings, Cynthia McDonald, other folks. It would all look a lot different. But local deliberative democracy is one of those pieces that's actually kind of close to my heart, and something that I ran in 2019. And a lot of these ideas were already in place. Naeem, you make, I think, such an important point, although it's, for a lot of people, they have to imagine this. We were taught civics in high school. My dad was a civics teacher. At some point, the powers that be figured out that this was problematic for them. And it's as plain as anything that the civics was removed. The instruction manual for being a citizen in America was removed from high school, just like they removed vocational education, just like they removed a lot of other stuff. And it's like, you can be in this narrow lane, but you can't do any of this other stuff, including understanding how government works. I believe, and I think a lot of other people, and I know a lot of other people agree with this approach, that power when you have power differentials in a society, the best way to try to equalize that is to give away the power that you can get. And for us, in my mind, what that means is you have regular folks making decisions about important things. So local development councils, there are a lot of councils actually across the country where people they can advise local elected officials, they can make suggestions. Often they're appointed. For a long time, I've advocated for elected local councils, and people have said that really can't be done. You can only elect representatives. The rest of it's too complicated. Well, we proved that wrong very recently when those of us who have been advocating for civilian oversight of the police got a piece of our legislation passed. And so we're actually electing local, and you see this in this platform piece that Naeem just mentioned, ECPS candidates. ECPS is, just an acronym essentially for public safety counselors, people who regular citizens are going to be able to go to when they have problems with the police, who are then going to interface with the police. We're having elections for those people right now, so it shows you can do it. We want to do it with development. There is probably nothing more powerful, more influential in terms of what happens on your street, on your block, than what gets built there. And over in Chicago, we have, and I think this is also a national phenomenon in Black communities, people come in, outsiders come in, they take a part of the community, and it's like there's the ribbon cutting, the big announcement, there's going to be some wonderful new thing. The first thing they do is take property away from people. And so right away, you've got disinvestment. And then they hire people from the outside. And they say, oh, we couldn't find anyone locally to do the work. And they feed into those tropes about how people don't want to work. Meanwhile, there's people without work, but with the skills. And they're unable to do the work. And then they'll build something. And if there's like retail, they'll get some chain that was competing with local people who are trying to make money doing that very thing. So at one step after the next, there's extraction of value. A local company can demand. You can, if you give people the power to negotiate what happens on their own street, You can say things like 100% local, like you got to sign a guarantee of 100% local employment, or you're not getting an approval for this project. Or maybe you say, well, 75% is good enough. Whatever it is, you're working that out. And one of the problems in other parts of the country that have tried these sorts of councils is that there's people with more resources, people from a certain part of the neighborhood that's wealthier, which mean generally those two things mean more white people end up on these councils. So two things I want to do to check that. One is it's like an even distribution across the neighborhoods. So different parts of the neighborhoods have their own representatives, as if it's a whole little city. And so if you're from the quote unquote bad part, which is usually just people who rent, you're still going to have a representative from there. And the other thing, which is mentioned in a kind of people will get funding. So if you're a person who doesn't necessarily have the resources, even to just get the word out, because it could be as simple as you can't make copies for flyers and you don't really have the time to do stuff because you're trying to work and raise your kids and do whatever else. If you could hire a couple of kids in the neighborhood to pass your flyers out that you were able to make at Kinko's because you got a little money for that, it transforms the whole idea of a local body. And at least in theory, our hope is it makes it a more of a fair and accurate representation and reflection. Now, the other thing, Naeem, if you'll just bear with me for one more moment, is, what we end up doing if we do get people from across communities like the Fifth Ward's communities, we have that diversity, that racial diversity, that economic diversity. There's all sorts of different people. You put them in a council together and you give them power. And you say, y'all can help manage what happens in the neighborhood, but you have to figure out how to get along. We're not making this just the rich people decide what's happening. We're not making this just one group of people. You all have power, but it's not going to do any good if you're just deadlocked all the time. And so now you're actually forced. It's like being in a jury. Now you're actually forced to figure out how to work with each other to get things done. And I think that's an important skill that people need across the board. People just stay in their little cocoons and they don't interact with each other. You get real respect for another human being when you have equal power and you need them to help you to get what you want. And so now all that racism, it's not getting you what you want, but really letting that guard down and starting to really see another human being is getting you what you want. And I think that can be a powerful, powerful thing. And I'll just take a break right there.
Yeah, because I want to say, I'm trying to get Ibrahim because he want to jump on as well. Did I send it to him? Oh yeah, I sent it to him. So I want to say, right, there was a Twitter space with one of the candidates who are they're also running for the same office. I won't say his name. To be honest with you, I can't remember his name. But I listened to the Twitter space, and I wanted to hear if his plan was comprehensive. Not only did I want to hear if it was comprehensive, I wanted to hear how he explained the detail of his plan. And that's another reason why I chose to, get into the things that you're going to do for Chicago, because I think that that's important, that people understand how policy works. How does policy work? And how will that policy, like I like to use the term policy prescriptions, because we know that for the most part, these prescriptions are drafted up with the purpose of remedying an ill or an ailment on the body of the state, if you will, right? So, and I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that at all. When it came to asking questions, the questions were more so asked in a way of, well, how are you going to do this thing, as opposed to Gabe, you know what I'm saying? As opposed to, can you tell me how your program and your policy prescriptions will benefit on your website, which I couldn't find for that particular individual. You say this and you say that. And right now I'm just simply reading from your website. So I'm listening, and I just got to say that this is one of the best, and you're just running for an alderman seat. But this is one of the best websites with a platform that I've ever seen. And I just have to be honest, this isn't because I know you, et cetera, et cetera. I have some people that I know, and their platforms some were good and some were not so good. Some were not so good, right? This was good. This is great. So with that said, I want to lead into, definitely. I want to lead into the golf course because I don't know what OPC is, right? So now you get a chance to break that down. So if you can, because you have OPC in the golf course, can you explain to us what OPC is and give the people an understanding of this golf course situation and how it will either negatively or positively impact the people of the Fifth Ward?
Absolutely. And I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much. I've tried. This has been 25 years in the making. In some ways, much longer than that. But in Chicago, I've been thinking about these issues for 25 years. So it gives you some degree of detail where other people get attracted to the prospect of being, a little bit important in the neighborhood, and so that you don't have as much time to put together a vision if you're being lured or the relatively new aspiration. So OPC is the Obama Presidential Center. So what we're talking about is Barack Obama set his sights on, we have the largest park in terms of actual physical land that people can access is on the south side of Chicago. It's a beautiful historic park. It's actually a national landmark. For a lot of Southsiders, it is their backyard. It's the only place they can go to hang out in the fresh air, recreate, just be together in a comfortable space. And President Obama just under 20 acres of this park, and he essentially privatized it because it's now his, and he's building a center on it. This has triggered well, there have been a lot of consequences. One big one is environmental. Another one is it drew housing speculators from across the country and even internationally to these neighborhoods. These, 85% Black neighborhood where I live, Woodlawn, 95% South Shore, another part of the ward, and it's caused rampant speculation. So people who rent their homes, like my wife and I, are facing dramatic rent hikes in many cases. People who rent their homes with some assistance are having challenges because now the market is far above what a person can get even in the rental market has gone way up. So there's less interest in renting to someone who has a voucher because, of course, those have a cap. So there's a whole thing around the for sale market, which has just become a kind of a fantasy land where they engineer extremely high prices for condominium sales to help rig the kind of assessed values in the neighborhood. It's essentially, modern day redlining in reverse. The red line is coming out up from the ground and out in these new developments where you could get a 3-bedroom condominium for $120,000. They're being sold for $750,000. That's an actual price that recently happened, and it's engineered. No one actually came to the neighborhood and said, "Oh, I'll buy that." This is the Obama Center. It has created a tsunami of housing insecurity that is dramatically impacting Friedman. He really has been, for the most part, glib about it. He makes jokes when he's asked about it. In addition, his center, which is the Obama Presidential Center, so OPC, people from the community, if they see OPC, are going to recognize right away what I'm talking about. He asked Tiger Woods to develop a golf course for him. This is additional land in his park. Now, there's a golf course there already. It's a community golf course. It's really inexpensive to go, and it's like a rambly. I don't play golf, so I've really learned a lot from golfers who have explained to me this thing is rambly, kind of casual, lots of canopy, lots of trees, old growth trees, 100 years old and older. So it's kind of a casual Saturday, Sunday afternoon thing that you can do with your friends. And he wants to create a competition level golf course in this space. So they would wipe out where the community was gathering. And again, even if you're not a golfer, there's a dramatic difference between, and you saw who would go there. Black folks would come and they would play golf. Contrary to popular belief, black folks are like riding bikes, golf, doing all of the kind
I
of
want to learn how
recreational
to play golf.
activities.
I want to learn how to play.
I'm telling you, when you come over here for the dedication, we're going to go over there because, of course, what you see, everything is done a little different in outside communities. So all you have to do is walk over there, and you're going to find a couple of older gentlemen who are going to be like, "Hey, are you interested?" They're going to play a game with you. It's going to be a wonderful social experience. They want to wipe this out. What they want to do is replace this with, competition level. It's about money. They take in the golf course that's there. They wipe it out. Tiger Woods has a specific stuff she does, which includes clear cutting these
Gabe.
trees.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah, you're having connection issues. Unless that's me.
All right.
Am I having connection issues? Ibrahim, can you hear me?
I hear you
fine.
So
okay, so if you can hear me,
I can hear you, Naheem.
So is it Gabe?
Yeah, it's a little spotty,
Okay.
but it's audible.
I'll try to. I can try to.
While you're doing that, I want to pull this comment up. All right, yeah, they saying is you, Gabe, by OG Otis. He said old growth trees with lush canopies are the best urban heat sinks and clean the air. That's a fact. That is a fact.
Can you hear me okay? How is it?
Yeah,
Any improvement?
I hear you. Your volume is a little lower, but I still hear. I can hear you though. I can definitely hear you.
Okay. I have one more fix that I can try.
Well, no, you're good. You're good. You're good actually.
Okay.
It seemed like a connection issue. Like right now, you're freezing a little bit.
Oh, I'm not sure what that's about. I wonder what's going on. Our internet access down here is not very good quality, unfortunately. Power on the north side would be a lot better. So if I can be heard, I'll like to speak.
Yeah, you breaking up, Gabe.
Okay. I think it's the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, you breaking up pretty bad.
Yeah. While he's working on that, I'll just give my thoughts about the OBS. We first seen this. Well, I first seen this with Jay-Z in Brooklyn and how they helped break ground for a Russian billionaire to help build that basketball arena in Brooklyn and displace a lot of the blacks. Sold them on the dream that they'll be able to come back to affordable housing, to better housing. And once they got displaced, they was never offered a chance to come back. What you see here is the same rendition again of white capital using black celebrity to be the face of gentrification, to go in and soothe the black people, the American freedmen that's in that district, as a better space, a better place of living. But what they actually are doing is ushering in gentrification. It's just done with a wolf in sheep's clothing, and that just speaks to the identity politics. Whether you like it or not, Obama is still one of the most loved presidents in the history of America, and he has a special place in many Black America's heart, right? They'll even, bypass the data that shows how he destroyed Black wealth, and, they'll praise the image of him and his family. And this is going to be one of the biggest obstacles for somebody like Gabe, who's running in a predominantly Black district, I presume. And this has been one of the critiques on Twitter as well about, being in a Black district, being a white man. And I would like to hear from Gabe or Marlon, like, what's their strategy to overcome that barrier? Because it's not just rooted in identity politics, it's also rooted in, a history of benign and neglect from white politicians who come into our community and, speak the language without actually being able to fulfill their policy promises. I mean, you heard it with Biden, his whole campaign, and then he gets in and he immediately, drops his whole plan about what he was going to do for the Black community, and he shifts it to the LGBTQ community and to immigration. You know, how do y'all seek to overcome that barrier of Black elites being used by white capital as identity politicians for other Blacks to, you know, basically you drop their barriers and allow them to do what white politicians can't, while you being a white politician that's trying to advocate for the Black community? Like, how do you overcome that barrier?
I appreciate this question, and I hope you can hear me okay. I tried a little, I switched.
You're actually real good right now.
Okay, great. So we dive right in. The biggest thing you're going to see, whether it's Obama or Biden or a local person, you know, it's your team. It's your team. You always, people are real kind of straightforward about what they're going to do, because they bring the people in with them that they're going to do it with. And so then you know what they're trying to accomplish. In my case, I do have somewhat of a track record, so people can see that, you know, 25 years ago or 23 years ago, when we saw there were problems around housing, we, a group of us got together, we established a credit union. So we didn't say something has to be done and get on social media and complain about it and then go on to the next thing. We built something that now has $4 million in accessible assets for Freedmen. It's a Freedmen-owned financial cooperative. 6 years ago, there was a fire in the community. We fought to save it. And it was exactly the kind of exchange you're describing right now, where people said, okay, you're a white man, we know you live in the community, but how do we know that what you're doing is going to benefit us? And there is a certain element of trust involved. We were able to raise a bunch of money locally, but we also leveraged our capacity nationally. We raised $650,000 in 7 weeks. I went in to the priests who owned the church, and I said, we have 650 grand for you, but everyone who restores this church has to be Black. We want a Black, completely not Black run, but when I go every day, and I had a staff member who did literally bring coffee every day to the people on the ground, and we made sure they were Black. And we were able to accomplish that because the people said, okay, we're going to roll the dice on you. Now, if I had said, we're going to do this right, and then I had brought in a Latino crew to restore it, it would be very difficult for me to go forward and continue to try to do the things I'm doing. But the truth is, when you see my detractors, you're seeing people who don't even live in the city or have a vested interest in some kind of a, you know, an elite group of people. You don't see regular people in the community saying, yeah, this guy, that credit union isn't any good, or yeah, they didn't really have those people at that work site. These are proven things that I've done in the past. And I'm coming in with Marlon, I'm coming in with Arthur, I'm coming in with a team of freedmen who are going to help me to execute these things. So I think, and I'm so grateful to Naheem for saying that he appreciates the depth of the platform. We're setting a new bar. And so one of the things I'm doing is, you can literally, there's no games to play when I tell you very specifically I'm establishing a council that is an elected council, and it's going to be separated into regions, so every part of the neighborhood is going to be represented. The specificity is all there if people are willing to engage me and deliberate with me. And so I think at some point you do get to a question of trust, like, are people going to believe me? But in terms of implementation and making sure this isn't just a con, I'm doing the best I can to create sort of controls around me that mean that when we get in, we're just implementing what we talked about. And it's not like you got the poetry in the campaign and now you get the prose once you get down. We're doing this a different way. We're doing this a lot more. This is this style of campaigning is responsive to the community we're talking to freedmen, because we're saying you need tangibles. We're not asking whether you want tangibles. We're starting with the assumption, because Marlon's not putting up with me giving some BS platform plank, and I say I'm going to give everyone, you know, hot chocolate and hugs. He's like, I want to see exactly what this looks like, or I'm not going to help you get this thing together. So I'm being pushed to do this in a way that specifically deals with the sort of challenges you're talking about. And I appreciate you asking that, because we're talking about the Fifth Ward, and Naheem's absolutely right. We've got local things we're dealing with, but I believe this is a model. I think you can take this level of specificity and go to Brooklyn and use my link and say, what are you going to do? Why don't you do something like this? Because this is a Friedman approved website. This is a Friedman vetted set of policy prescriptions that are not all policy prescriptions that are specifically Friedman related. There's a whole thing about pets or animals. There's a whole thing about habitat, because we know the interconnections, and we also know that we have 25% of the voters are white. We have a significant population of Asian voters. So it's strategically encompassing, but none of it betrays the core values, which is Friedman first.
Do you know the racial demographic of your voter base? Is it over 50% black voters, and are those mostly baby boomers?
So we mostly go by the demographics of the ward. To the extent we've done a deeper analysis, it's fairly representative. The voters dip a little bit in terms of, there are slightly more white people voting. There are slightly less black folks voting. The people who vote are older, but it's not, although it's statistically significant, it's not so significant that it would justify sort of saying, well, this should, we should be campaigning in a way that we're appealing just to the white voters, which is what a lot of people will appeal to the affluent part of the ward. And that's kind of equally divided, black and white. But the policy that they're talking about is mostly, it's white centric. It's the kind of stuff white people worry about. Like when you talk about crime, you talk about getting people, off your street, as opposed to figuring out the root cause. So it's got a different kind of sound to it. But what I want to say about that, and I think this is crucially important for people to understand, is the demographics change depending on the message of the candidates. So by and large, candidates have the same messaging in our ward that you get everywhere else, and the turnout is pretty similar to what you get everywhere else. Last time we had a young man, Will Calloway, who is a police reformer. He is an advocate for control of the police. He's in his, I don't know, late 20s or early 30s. You look at him and he looks like he's from the community. He talks like he's from the community. And we got a bump in younger voters coming out and voting for him. When Barack Obama was running for president, we broke records, like beyond broke records, in the parts of the ward that were renters and younger people. And we broke records in his first term and then broke those records again in his second term. So while other people were kind of cooling off to Obama, young renters in our ward doubled down on the man. So if people like your message, they'll come out in greater numbers. By and large, it's slightly more white, slightly older, but in truth, if you reach people, those numbers don't matter. They're not set in stone. They're not set in stone by any means.
Indeed. Oh, so I mean, man, excellent answers. And
thank you.
We, like I said earlier, we hear the difference. And when you are into something and you're really into it, people can tell by how you express it. And that's why I brought up that other space. It's not to disparage the other candidate or any of the other candidates. I took a brief perusal over some of the other candidates' websites, those with websites that I could find, of course. And, I was just looking at some of it. And I'm like, I don't see anything outside of the cookie cutter boilerplate template that politicians use. And what I'm looking at on your website is transformative. And you just said a thing when you said this is something that can be used in Brooklyn, right? Which means this is something that can be used in Los Angeles or any county where they have aldermen or commissioners. And I appreciate that. I definitely appreciate that. So I want to get into the city. Of course, we can't cover everything tonight, but there were certain things that I wanted to point out because I felt that they spoke to civics and really the lack thereof. And I think you did a good job at explaining how we had civics in high school and really in public school, elementary school,
Right.
growing up as well. And at some point they seem to have removed it. And so I wanted to focus on certain questions that spoke to that element and how your policies will help Chicago's Fifth Ward. So I pointed out several things that I wanted to speak or wanted you to speak on. And one of them is city finances, right? And I'll read your 3 bullet points here. Budget. Participatory budgeting for the entire city budget, not just in a handful of wards and at the discretion of aldermen. Subcommittee to end TIFs, likely in budget and operations. Prioritize reduction in pension obligation and budgeting. I don't know what TIFs is, so you get to explain that to us. And that could be just the terminology, acronym I'm not, or abbreviation I'm not familiar with, or that could just be a Chicago thing like OPC. So you could give us a breakdown of that.
I'm happy to. So TIFs, let me right away say TIFs are a tool. This is an obscure thing that Chicago advocates have done a good job of bringing into the forefront, but a lot of cities use this tool. And the idea is that you draw a map of an area. And in theory, these were supposed to originally be for so-called blighted areas. And you freeze the increment, so tax increment financing. You freeze the increment of the taxes where it's at that goes to local taxing bodies. What that means practically is parks don't get any more money, schools don't get any more money. All of the things that we sort of rely on to, as a community improves, to put more money into those facilities, that's frozen, that's stopped. So as a developer starts to increase the property value, rather than people in the community seeing that value translate into more investment from the government into their local institutions, all they're seeing is their property taxes go up. They don't see any benefit from it. So what this has become in Chicago is a game where huge amounts of increment have been accumulated, hundreds of millions and even billions of dollars, and then they're distributed to these outside development corporations that come in. And we can't really get into this idea of extractive investment, but I hope at some point to talk more about it. It's a lie that development ever actually happens in Black communities. It's a lie. What happens is people arrive in a Black community and extract wealth and leave. And you may have some housing afterwards, or you may have some storefronts that don't get rented afterwards or whatever. But there's never, if you don't have the capacity to be a part of the development process and actually benefit from it yourself as a community, it's not going to benefit you. And so that never happens. So TIFs, $100 million, someone wants to build affordable housing in some neighborhood, they get money out of the TIF. They get the money, you don't see the money. It doesn't, you don't have a choice who goes into your neighborhood, and you don't have a choice how that money's spent. This is a good example of how development councils make a difference, because you could literally say, okay, this project seems pretty good. You're not getting any, additional subsidy from the city, though. We want you to build this with your own money. And that can be a condition. To me, those development councils you're in the planning department. You're literally saying, this is my street. And if you can do this in a way that benefits me, okay. But if you're going to screw up my schools because you want some kind of a development scheme that freezes value and stuff, we're not going to do that. TIFs are problematic. We could have a whole conversation on TIFs, but I'm just going to say, we need taxes to pay for the stuff we pay for taxes for, and you generally cannot trust political bodies with a whole bunch of money that they have discretion over. You got to earmark that stuff, because when you give a politician, you give a regular person $100 and say, do something good for me with it, and you're lucky if you get $20 worth of good from it. Right. So, you got to be careful with that. Pension obligations all over the country are a problem. It is a scam. So they've been kicking the can down the road on pension obligations for a long time. It's a way to cripple. We have been systematically and intentionally crippling all public services in this country ever since integration, and that is not a coincidence. We are burning down the house rather than let everybody into the house. So we don't have public transit, we don't have public schools, we don't have policing systems that actually do the policing that they need to do. And it's because it is better to ruin public services in the eyes of a system that was founded on slavery than to say that all men are in fact created equal. And so they're bankrupting us by just not paying their pension obligation. They're getting the credit card bill and they're saying, I'll pay that next year. And then next year comes and they say, I'm gonna pay that in 5 years. And now they've ballooned so large everywhere that it's like it's almost an insuperable problem. But in Chicago, there's two ways that you can deal with your pensions. First, if the police cost us so much money in settlements that if you reform the police, if you end qualified immunity, for example, so now I can sue you, Officer Jones, because you beat my son, all of a sudden you're going to see a whole different way that those problems are approached by police. Now we don't have hundreds of millions of dollars getting paid out to them. TIFs are the other example. If we end TIFs, that capturing of revenue that then gets distributed to developers stops. And I promise you, for local people who are watching, developers are going to keep coming to Chicago. And I double promise you they're coming to the Fifth Ward. Whether we like it or not, the Obama Center, on the one hand, it's a problem because it's creating housing insecurity, but it is a draw. So if we can figure out a way to make sure freedmen are owning this property before all the developers swoop in, and they're in the middle of these negotiations, and they're getting the land that's getting sold from them, so they get the cash. Well, all of a sudden, I'm not so mad. The problem we have now is we're losing all that value. So it's really a matter of just kind of reorienting, and in the critical elements that you have to do to make that happen is kind of rework how money is used in the city, because the city, it is structurally racist, and that is so the depths of that. It's hard until you wade through this stuff, and it's all. I mean, the best analogy for I think anyone to understand navigating politics is to just look at the word freedman. Just look at the word freedman and look at the scholarship Naeem has done around that. Just a word in politics can be a lifetime of scholarship to understand. Now you start talking about taxing bodies, you start talking about pensions for public employees, you start talking about how we kind of reorganize how taxing happens. And there are a million ways to fool people and to manipulate people. And so, you go to first principles. And for us, first principles is, if you let the people in the neighborhood make the decisions and control the land, it's going to be really hard to pull a fast one. The problem comes when you allow outside entities to come in and do things like take the way property was taken. First, it was civil unrest in the late 60s and early 70s, and we know why. A punishment for people whose property was a site of civil unrest was it was taken from them. The city took your house if you were an organizer, responding to assassinations and other, acts of oppression. In the 80s, they just changed that terminology and made it about drugs. If they deemed your house a drug house, there was no appeal. There was no way you could say, there's no record of, drug activity or whatever. They took your house again. We have city lots in the Fifth Ward that the city has held on to since the 70s. So we understand that this isn't about improving the community or putting things to productive use. I also know that there's a vacant lot down the street from me that's being sold for $350,000. So what if those city-owned land, those lots, were in the hands of freedmen? $350,000 is the college education for your kid. You can start your own business. You have a real nest egg to start some kind of a real retirement. All of those things become possible when the land you should have had in the first place is given back. That's what
one of the social services that was highlighted in Chicago was how the police treat different opioid addicts in affluent communities versus the vulnerable community. And what was highlighted was that, they had easy access to methadone clinics in the affluent neighborhood. But in the poorer, more vulnerable neighborhoods, cops actually camped out around the methadone clinics and preyed upon those who was going to the clinics to get treatment. I don't know if this is something that's in your policy, but how do you plan to deal with community leaders and the police so Chicago doesn't continue to extract and prey on its most vulnerable citizens when they're trying to get treatment for some of their issues?
I appreciate this question so much. For 2.5 years, I was the president of the board of an organization called St. Martin de Porres House of Hope. We changed that name to the Southside Center of Hope. It was a recovery center for women. And I saw exactly what you're describing day after day after day. And, you know, we have, and I'll tell you, by the way, that center side now. They couldn't afford to stay in the space that they had. This is critical, and if a person knows South Shore and knows 71st Street, they know that there's a lot of activity there, and that has to do with the illegal drugs and opioids. And they also know that the exploitation by police is just it's absolutely criminal. That's the word. And you've got to protect people. And so this starts to get into some of the institutional response that Marlon and I are developing that begins on the street. And so we've got a couple of spaces that will be strategically used in such a way as to help people who need that help, and also give them space where the police can't be, hanging out. So methadone clinics become a problem. A place that's literally just about recovery has the challenge of being an easy target, and not just an easy target for police. Also, there are other kinds of predators who recognize, that sort of thing. So one of the things that we're going to do is have a clinic with integrated services. There are no health clinics on 71st Street or anywhere near it in South Shore, despite the fact that we have the University of Chicago hospital system just walking distance, just 20 blocks north. But they let people suffer, and there are reasons for that on 71st Street. We want to walk in what's called a federally qualified health center right in the center of the street. And we also want to create spaces that are healing spaces. So maybe not literally for somebody who in that moment needs medical help. That's more appropriate for that medical center, but who need the sort of aftercare that is required. And in some cases you do need medical assistance, but in other cases you just need a safe space to be with other grown folks, other freedmen. And so we've got a model that we're using for men that's going to essentially be like a social club. So it'll be like a members only type thing where you can go in there, and the police aren't getting in there. That's a private organization. If the police try to get in, if they have a warrant, I suppose they could come in, but that's not how that happens in our neighborhood. So there's no we're just wandering through and we're just doing whatever. It's closed to the public. You get to hang out here, and young men will also be welcome in the space, so there can be some mentorship. And so some of what is done, the strategy that's used in our communities to keep the trauma kind of perpetuating, is that there's no place to have peace. There's no place to just sit and be. There's no place to hang out with other people like yourself, similar age, similar background, similar lineage, and just have, that kind of comfortable space. Now, the Freedmen's Bureau, of course, will have an element of that, but it's going to also have kind of a public side to it. So we also want to think about spaces where you can just go and it's quiet, and you can chill, and it's just comfortable. And so we think those two strategies are a good starting point. But the other thing I'll say, Ibrahim, is I think what you're talking about requires public hearings. And so I think the city of Chicago, the city council, needs to hear what actually goes on when people who are struggling with substance abuse are out on the streets and encounter the police. There are a couple of things that we've kept under the rug in Chicago that need to be blown up. One is the way, with respect to police, one is the way they interact with people with substance abuse problems and how different that is in different places, and the sexual abuse that people deal with by the police, literally just in a random stop. The places, the way that they will do searches and the things that they will do to people. And these are criminal things that we just have come to accept as the way it is. And it's got to change. And so we've got to speak truth to power on this exact issue that you're talking about and really expose it. Because if people had a full understanding of what the Chicago Police Department does to the average Southsider, that they encounter on the street. More likely than not, they would be shocked. I think people would be shocked. They just don't believe what we see every day.
What type of police reform initiatives could you guys implement in a fifth ward that could alleviate some of that hostile relationships between the community and the police departments?
I think the way that so we actually have two districts. Most of the fifth ward is in the third district. The way the alderman interacts with the head of the district, the head police officer in that district, is critical. And so you've got to talk about expectations. And of course, the aldermen and their representatives are engaged in a very different way than anyone else. So a critical part of managing the police and also addressing violence, it'll be simultaneous. We have to be out there. We have to be out there. We have a lot of aldermen that get elected and disappear. You never see them again until the next election. We have to literally be walking the street, which is what we've been doing. Marlon and I have been on the streets since September, October, and given a successful campaign, we're not going to stop walking. We're not going to stop being out and talking to people, because that's what's going to change things. So the police will engage the community differently when they see people on the street. And I don't think you necessarily need shotguns necessarily, as you did in California at one time, to regulate police. But I do think if there's a government official whose office takes your video information seriously, all you need is a phone. So if people know, a lot of my philosophy is I want to change the city, I want to change the world, but I'm working to get hired to change the fifth ward. Just like I don't want criminals in my ward causing problems for my residents who are good people who are just trying to work hard and come and go to work and do whatever they're doing, enjoy their retirement. I don't want police harassing. They're just criminals with badges when they're committing illegal activities. And I want them to make the calculation, I'll do this somewhere else. And what I want ultimately is that they're not doing it anywhere, but just like I say, Freedman first, it's Fifth Ward first. I want the Fifth Ward to be the most attractive ward for Black Americans for Freedman. I want there to be not a room for rent in the Fifth Ward, because everybody says, I'm safe there. I'm appreciated there. I'm respected there. My talents and my intellect are celebrated in the Fifth Ward. I go to the Freedmen's Bureau and I matter. I'm not waiting in line while other people get served first. There is no line for anyone else. This is for me and my family and, you know, our priorities. And that's what we want to achieve. And I believe you create a space like that and you give people reasons to come out during the good weather and be together, and they understand that you're right there and you're making sure. I told somebody today where we were going to put the ward office if we're elected, and they said, why would you put it there? And what I was describing was the middle of the street. I'm describing we're in the center of where the activity is, but everyone assumes you're going to tuck yourself away somewhere like the current alderman has done, and you're going to avoid the problems. I want to stand in the middle of the problems to make them be harder for people to, you know, set off. So I don't know, that might have been a little bit off, Ibrahim, and I apologize, but that's kind of the way my vision operates there. And economics also change all of this. We give reparations, you're not going to have these problems. And so we're going to be one of the most active lobbying centers for reparations. And we're going to have local reparative justice models that will similarly, are intended to similarly deliver assets to freedmen, because the crimes that the city of Chicago has committed around housing may not get you the $900,000 that, you know, is one estimate of what every freedman deserves and can be delivered through reparations. But it's probably like 110,000 is probably not a crazy number, or 125,000. You know, what's the value of, I was supposed to get an apartment and you steered it to someone else and I had to have my kids go to a bad school? How do you quantify that? Or I should have had that mortgage and you steered me to another home that ended up being a money pit. So we're also going to try to deliver assets in that way, because I know fundamentally the root of the problem is capital. And that's the intent. That's the game, is we keep you poor. If I rupture a community economically, I've ruptured it politically.
Definitely. The excellent responses, Ibrahim. I hope he was able to answer your questions thoroughly. I don't know if you have any follow-ups, but I have 2 questions in the chat that I want to get to, and they center on the topic of reparations. Did you have any follow-ups to anything, Ibrahim?
We'll get into the reparations conversation. I think that's kind of important right now, especially given the debates that he had with the other people that was running for alderman as well.
Okay, definitely. So Sister BB Rodriguez asks, how were you able to draft the reparations plan for your county for the freedmen descendants exclusively? And also, what was your motivations? Thank you.
I appreciate those questions. We're in a very small area, so the county is actually larger than the city. We're in a small part of just to give people geographic orientation, we're in a small part of the south side of Chicago, and our geographic designations are wards. So I'm going to answer this question referring to wards, but I completely understand what you're asking. So how do we make the 5th Ward a Freedmen First ward? I wonder how much harder this would be to do in a different kind of city, because Chicago, the entire city council, the control that the city council has over everything real estate, literally down to if you want a sign for your store, you need to go through your local alderman to get an okay for it, is all based on greed and graft. So the idea is every opportunity in the process of doing anything in the built environment where you can slip an alderman a little money, they've created a roadblock. They've created they're gatekeepers all throughout the process. So that was the foundation. That's why it's designed the way it's designed. It's gotten a little better in recent years, but it's still a problem. I mean, we've had the ward adjacent to us, literally the last 4 aldermen went to jail, and the 5th one didn't go to jail because he died under indictment. So it's like the corruption here is really rampant, but you can use that corruption to your advantage. So we have a lot of control of what happens to the built environment in our ward. And so we're focused on what we can do in terms of real estate. Now, passing a law, and this is, I don't know how deep we're going to get into this, Naheem. It may literally get shifted over to you. But for me addressing this, I'm just going to say passing a law that is specific to a group of people. I wouldn't try to pass a law for Black people. I wouldn't try to pass a law for African Americans. I wouldn't try to pass a law for anything but a lineal group, because it won't immediately. Chicago, Marlon and I both attract a lot of attention. So the minute we try to do anything for African Americans or for Black people, there will be multiple lawsuits to try to throw that out in court, and they'll succeed. And they'll succeed because it's race-based. We're doing lineage-based policy. So some of the things that are specific policy laws that we're trying to pass is disaggregation and an adjustment in the policies of set-aside. So we have set-asides in Chicago that will be a certain percentage for MBE, WBE. That's what they use here. Minority business enterprises and women business enterprises. And basically in Chicago, if you're anything but a white man, you can get that benefit directly, and a white man just needs to be married to somebody who fits into one of those categories. So freedmen get nothing, essentially. It is a vanishingly small percentage of, and then if you try to have a local component, it is literally invisible. Like it's like maybe 1 or 2 people in a crew of thousands. So we need freedmen laws because we have to manage and regulate actually how they're distributing those contracts. So first, you introduce disaggregation everywhere, and second, you say, okay, and now we want that applied to contracts, and the percentage is 30% for freedmen. You can do what you want for African immigrants. You can do what you want for other folks. I'm not against anyone getting a percentage of what they can get, but we're freedmen first. And to me, this is how anyone should, in my view, everyone should be on the reparations bandwagon. What I don't understand is why other people aren't motivated by focusing on freedmen descendants, because or really freedmen, because it's not descendants. Freedmen isn't a thing that happened statically. My teacher Naheem explains it is something that exists in perpetuity, and you can even, one of the wonderful things that a piece of illumination I just got recently from Naheem is you can go back to Roman times and find freedmen. And so American freedmen, of course, are a different and specific lineal group, but the idea is an idea that as long as there's been civilization and there's been people who have been enslaved in civilization, there's been freedom. So, and that, right? Did I get that right, sir? Am I doing all right?
Oh yeah, definitely. And
this is so important.
You also answered Sister Antonia's question, because she said, thank you for your tireless work / efforts as a freedman fighter. How can we be assured that local policies for reparations primarily benefit American freedmen? I think you just laid that out. And you're absolutely correct in your breakdown when we're talking about local reparations, right? And I know there's some contention about local reparations. I have my views on it. I think anything that repairs is reparations. That's just my view on it. But I think people kind of conflate the broader. I think people conflate reparations from, and I'm not saying you're doing this, Sister Bibi, but I think that people conflate reparations and how it would look as a federal program with those who push it at a local level. And I think that can create some of the uneasiness, maybe even distrust, et cetera, et cetera. But ultimately, from what I've seen and from our conversation from the last stream, and just even speaking with Brother Marlon, we know that again, using that term, policy prescriptions that are freedmen first are centered around repairing those people who have suffered generations of harm in Chicago's Fifth Ward. And what can be done in those instances is that we can say, look at what they did here, and look at what they did in California, or look at what they're doing in California, et cetera, et cetera. Should what happened in California be successful, and I believe that it will, should you get elected, and I believe that you will, we will at some we would have a microcosm of what can be done at the federal level. It's like, okay, well, we have Gabe and Marlon Watson and Arthur Ward and Cynthia McDonald, et cetera. And once Gabe got elected, they were able to enact certain measures. And these measures that were enacted were based on the model of repair, right? It was rooted in the model of repair. It's like, okay, well, we can't obviously give out reparations to, you know what I'm saying, because you got to deal with state budget, city, but what we can do is what we can do within our ward, and the monies that's allocated that are usually going to things that you spoke about earlier, like TIFs, that in monies that are being wasted, et cetera, et cetera. The OG Otis said the hurdle will be raised. You can't do the obstacles of piecemeal, gonna be a hard lesson. And, I know that your position is in alignment with Otis in that regard. My thing is, like, I don't want people to get confused by what reparations is by its strict definition, right? When you look at what Evanston is doing, it's clear to see that that is not a reparations program, right? Whether it's local or whatever, it's not a reparations program because it's not designed to repair. It's an open-ended policy that seems to be all-inclusive, and it doesn't do what it was suggested when they were pushing this thing in the first place. So
Yeah, you make as usual, Naeem, you make a good point, and there's a critical insight there that I only just realized as you were saying that. If we all agreed to however reparations is applied, it has to be lineage based. I wonder if you could use it locally, because then programs like Evanston wouldn't stand up to the scrutiny of the test. Generally, my view is I kind of think of it as to make it easy for me, there's a proper noun reparations, and it refers to the federal, effort. And then reparations, the common noun, can actually be applied to anything, but it therefore kind of loses some of the sort of specificity. But in any case, this is a great example. We have so much rancor and we can't even get past step one in some conversations because people want to fight about whether you agree with everything or not. And here we are having this conversation, and we disagree on a thing that for a lot of people would be a deal breaker. But I recognize the value of the bigger picture here. I also want to say, what we're doing in a lot of ways, there's some novelty to it, but critically, if people would just listen to Naeem and be the power and read From Here to Equality and look at what's happening in California and accept that as the strategy that is working, the intellectual foundations, even a little bit of philosophy behind it, and the practical application, and hopefully will be a modest contribution to that. You can have a whole different set of ideas about how you think it ought to happen, and I respect that. And so that's one kind of conversation. That's a theological conversation in a sense, where people have these kind of abstract ideas. So it's philosophical, but I think of it as theological because it's kind of like how many angels can stand on the head of a pin. It has a value, but it's heuristic kind of exclusively. But for those of us who are really trying to move this forward, because literally every day lives are at stake. Man, let's just stick with the playbook. This is a fantastic playbook. There's nothing I'm doing. There are little variations on the theme that is laid out by the current reparationist intellectuals and the pragmatists applying that work, like, Chris and Friday and all of the great people in California, of course, Miller Moore. But it's variations. The theme itself, the playbook itself is written. And so for people who are, in their hearts, their burning desire is that we get reparations for freedmen, because nothing moves forward without that. We've got a pretty good plan laid out here, and some strong, serious people with tremendous integrity. And I just hope, I understand some people are going to bicker and fight no matter what, but I just hope that we can start to transition a little bit away from that and more towards get a clear understanding. If you don't agree with Naeem, if you don't agree with Sandy Darity, if you don't agree with what's going on in California, maybe make an effort first to hear more, and I don't want to, I probably already was just too preachy, but I just feel in my heart, I'm just so grateful to be in a movement with so much support and so many people with such clear understanding. I think there's real opportunity here for almost any application of the ideas.
Indeed. So we're going to, start winding this thing down. We're going to try to do this probably once a week leading up to the election. My schedule might be a little busy next week, but I definitely want to keep the conversation going, because I want to make sure, definitely, I want to make sure that we are gaining an understanding of politics and how policy works and how the idea of policy works. What's the impetus behind drafting the policy prescription, right? That's why I asked you certain questions and the questions that Ibrahim asked you. I think those were more piercing questions to kind of like, okay, well, let me go and peel back some more of these layers and get into, a little bit of my bag a little bit more, so that people could have a clearer understanding of what we're working on. And it's not just Gabe's ideas, but the people who are working with Gabe. And that's the way we should do it. This is what campaign teams are about. And, you know, Marlon said earlier, when it comes to expressing the thing, he'd rather just let Gabe do it, right? And I've heard Arthur Ward. Arthur Ward is another one that has no problem with expressing. When we had the reparations rally in Atlanta 2 years ago, I believe Arthur Ward was the first speaker. And I mean, he just kind of set the bar. And then Marlon spoke, and I was like, man, these Chicago guys is coming up here knocking this thing out the park. Y'all intimidating me a little bit. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, sometimes depending on the situation, we're going to speak and lay things out. And sometimes, you know, I always defer to my brothers. Last night in the space that we had, you probably kept hearing me say, Brother Ali, please break that down. Because I knew that certain things he would break it down better than I would. And he did just that. So, you know, and that's because as a team, we know each other's strengths and we know each other's weaknesses. So what I want to do real quick is I want to go to Brother Marlon. If you're still tapped in, if you have any closing statements that you want to add before we shut it down.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you once again. And I hope y'all can see how deeply.
Is his feed frozen? Oh, there he is. Yes, sir. We see you now.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's you, Gabe.
Yeah, I think that's you, Gabe. Yeah, I hope y'all can see how well and how deeply invested Gabe is in these topics. The dude understands this stuff. So when it's time to explain stuff, that's why whenever we do a show or a space, I learn something from Gabe. What you will learn when you get into the political world, if you ever get into the political world on this side of the coin or this side of the equation, what you'll realize is many times politicians run for office because they're looking for a job. It has nothing to do with the service involved. It has nothing to do with the people. It's a whole system. It's an entire system. I remember I was working on the campaign a few years ago, and a judge walked in and he was talking about the person I was working for, and they were just kind of talking in general, and he said, yeah, so and so, I think they're if they win this election, I think if they win this election and they stay for 4 years, I think they max out their retirement. And I said to myself, what? Retirement? What is he? So I got to dig it around a little bit. And the thing with politics is if you get elected, your retirement starts, and you can seed your retirement. And then if you have a salary as an alderman or a state rep, that's one salary. And you join the committee, that's another piece of a salary. And then sometimes when they leave office, they'll go join the union, and then they get that retirement. And they spend 2 or 3 years at this union and go to another one and get this retirement. It's a whole system. And so a lot of aspiring electeds do it. It's like wanting to go work for Microsoft or wanting to go work in a tech space or wanting to go work wherever. They do it because it's a whole system. Like the service is not part of it. And so I'm saying that to say, many times when you get a candidate who may be well-spoken, clean-cut, whatever, you have to take that candidate and teach them the policy. You have to do like a 2-3 hour grilling session with them, interview them and make sure they answer the questions right and make sure they understand it. So if somebody asks a question, they won't look uneducated, I'm saying all that to say, I ain't done that with Gabe. Not one time. Not once. The only thing we really, outside of the Friedman stuff, well, we talk about all this stuff, but many times I'm listening and learning from him, like about TIFs and the way policy. The dude knows this stuff. So this is not a careerist. The politician or the elected that I just described is what we would call a careerist. That's not Gabe. That's not what this is. The dude understands this stuff deeply and can talk to you about it for hours. And he can just talk about this stuff for hours. Like you can tell he spent time learning this stuff. And so I hope y'all can see that. And all that is good, but it won't matter if we can't get it to the people. And so last time we were here, y'all did help us, and I truly appreciate it. We need your help again. We need your help again. So if y'all could donate to the campaign, it's GABEFORFIVE.com, or you could use that link that's in the
both links work. Gabe45 gets you to this longer one. And that's just for SEO. You know, I've got the full URL so that we are at the top of the Google search when people search. But Gabe45 gets you there just as good, and you can donate or volunteer.
Yep. So we need help with that. And if we get in, like Gabe keeps talking about, this is a model that we could use. You know, I got the technology. I got we got somebody who understands policy well. We got Naeem. We could bring this together and help campaigns around the country if in the event that we do. Even if, you know, win, lose, or draw, we're still developing something that could be useful.
That's
but
right.
We want to get in, because if we get somebody in, that opens up a whole different lane of connections and resources that we can use as politicos to advance this agenda. So this race is super, super important. We appreciate your help, but we need some more help. So go help us if you can. Thanks again, Brother Naeem. Thank you, Ibrahim, for the question, and thank the BTP audience. And yeah, man, let's make this happen.
Indeed. Before we go to Gabe, Brother Ibrahim, did you have anything you want to share before we log out?
I would just like to say, you know, I appreciate all of the people that's running with a serious Freedman platform. I think it's very important that we infect the American political discourse with our brand of politics. So many times in our community, people that look like us or advocate for American freedmen don't have a political imagination when it comes to getting us out of some of the vestiges of slavery, right? And in America, anything seems to be possible except for this one group historically. So I would just like to appreciate all of the Freedmen candidates and people who are running on Freedmen platform to just let people know, you know, when it comes to this group, we can do things. We have done things historically. And if you can, you know, go leaps and bounds politically for other groups, for like refugees, LGBTQ community, or those who advocate for liberal policies like the Green New Deal, we can bring this same energy to American freedmen politics when it comes to issues that affect our community. And I think, you know, like these people who are running serious campaigns are trailblazers, and that really understand that this thing won't be a Hail Mary, right? We're going to win this thing inch by inch, yard by yard. And I would just like to thank all of the politicians who are running with this in mindset, and just know, you know, we got your back. Keep going. You guys are at the forefront. You are the vanguards of this thing, and don't give up. I know it's going to be some discouraging moments, but just keep your heads high and, you know, stay rooted and stay focused on the work. I appreciate you all.
Indeed, indeed. All right, Gabe, close us out. Close us out.
Real simple. First, I have to give Marlon so much credit. It's, of course, you have the figure, right, that does the politicking and the talking, whatever, but this is as much his campaign as his mine. And there have been some innovations. Marlon's been doing politics for a long time. And, you know, I've been familiar with politics, and I ran in 2019, so I'm not completely new to it, but he's done some stuff that has blown my mind. And for strategic reasons, we're not really getting into that right now. But, you know, once we're through, and I imagine, you know, we succeed, then the next thing we need to do is replicate his work as much as anything else, because he's created a playbook. I had people tell me they were coming for me when we turned our signatures in to get on the ballot, because there are ways in Chicago you can knock someone off the ballot before they even get there. And I was assured by other candidates they were coming for us. And we know through FOIA that their lawyers reviewed our signatures. They could not find one to challenge. Marlon's come up with a method for that signature collection that is bulletproof. And that's just one tiny example. That innovation continues. The last thing I want to say is, earlier today, we had a press conference where we laid out, I applied, some of this gets a little bit abstract. We took the concepts and put them on the street, 71st Street, which we're always talking about, Freeman Boulevard. And we said, what happens if we take these institutions economically and put them on the ground? It's all well and good to talk about empowerment, but what happens? How do people pay their rent? And we were able to figure out, we used a model that shows $4.75 million of salaries that come from the key institutions on the street. If you look at my Facebook right now, Facebook, Gabe 45, I describe it, but we're also going to be activating in about 20 minutes. As soon as we get off, Naheem, I'm going to put a page on the website, gabe45.com, that's going to break that down. I want people to be able to look at that. We're giving the numbers and we're showing proposed locations. So you can imagine that whatever your main street in your community is, when you start talking about a financial cooperative, health, and a Freedmen's Bureau, that's not just abstraction. That's millions of dollars of money. And I am telling you, we will not let one person get a check there that's not a freedman from the neighborhood. You can do that. That's not politics. That's not abstract. You can, if you are courting people, it's just that when people normally get courted in politics, what they want is the money. They want a donation. They want some cash under the car seat. They don't say it's all got to be local. I did it. I did this in 6 years ago. We went with a bag and we said, we have $650,000. You need to hire nobody but Black people. And that man wanted that money so bad that whatever prejudice he might have had was overcome by the recognition that we were getting something done. We can replicate that. We can and we will. So you can look at my Facebook page right now, but shortly, and I will tweet out and let people know, we're going to have this all broken down. I want this as, to the extent that we can share our strategy now, we want to do it. Some stuff we're keeping, for obvious reasons to ourselves.
Right.
Naheem, it's as if I wake up in the morning and you're part of the team phone calls. You're such a part of what we're doing. BTP is such a part. Ibrahim, I appreciate your questions because all of this conversation makes us stronger. Thanks to everybody. Antonio, what you're doing in Boston is also miraculous. So many people are doing so much wonderful work. And I have so much gratitude to all of you for allowing me to be a guest at this table. It's a wonderful time to be alive in America.
Honors. And thank you for taking up this Herculean task, because it is a Herculean task. It doesn't matter what your skin tone is. You are trying to do something for the American freedmen, and specifically, right, that's when you start to see the wolves come out. They come. Oh yeah, and I know y'all have experienced some of that. We spoke about that a little bit on the last live stream, and I've been listening to you in the Twitter spaces. I caught some of the last Clubhouse that interview that you did, and yeah, so I hear it, and plus just building with my brother Logic over the years and understanding a little bit about Chicago politics is I don't know, man. That Chicago politics has its own unique thing to it, and I know that thing is kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy. So,
yeah, indeed.
Thank you again for coming through. Next week, my schedule might be a little busy. I'm not sure yet, but I will definitely let you know because what is it? 4 more weeks to the election?
Yes, sir. A little over 4 weeks. That's right.
Okay. So we want to make sure that you're on regularly. And, we've done this with other reparationist candidates before. And, leading up to their elections, we wanted to give them as much exposure as possible and let the people hear their plans and what they're trying to do for American freedmen and for their districts, commissions, etc., whatever they're running for, right? So with that said, family, make sure that you all hit that like button. Make sure you support Gabe's platform. Go to gabe45.com. There's another link in the chat that leads you to the website that I was reading from as well. And, review the platform for yourselves. Review it for yourself. I think this is, like I said, one of the best platforms, political platforms that I've seen. We've broken a few down here on Be the Power, and I'm not saying that just because. I'm saying that because that's exactly what it is to me. So with that said, family, I leave you all with the motto of the platform, which is don't just fight the power, become the power. And then and only then will you have the power to make a change. And with that, I say peace.